$31 trillion national debt is no longer a mere financial forecast. It actually surpasses our nation's total economic output. In the midst of a Senate committee meeting, Senator Warnock firmly pressed Treasury Secretary Bessent on the latest federal shortfall statistics. Watch the pivotal conversation that ultimately defined this inquiry.
And this year, under the Trump administration's economic policies, the $31 trillion national debt exceeded GDP for basically the first time since World War II. Think about that. Now, to be fair, debt did exceed GDP during the COVID-19 pandemic, but that was only briefly. Do you think that going into debt to extend billionaire tax cuts was a good investment? Yes or no?
I disagree with the categorization of billionaire tax cuts when, in fact,
that statistic triggered an intense dispute regarding living expenses, soaring inflation, and federal objectives. Here is the complete session right from the start.
Last month, I asked the president's nominee to lead the Federal Reserve what I thought was a simple question, but he tried to dodge it. His answer was cute. I'm not sure the American people who are struggling were laughing. So I'll ask you the same question and see if I can get a clear answer. President Trump has said that his grade of the economy, his words, is a quote, plus, 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 plus. He said this before he sent energy and gas prices soaring with this illegal war in Iran, a war that's costing taxpayers billions of dollars, $1 billion or more per day, turbocharging inflation. So I'll ask the Secretary of the Treasury the same question. Given all of the challenges facing ordinary Americans, our political differences aside, what grade would you give the U.S. economy right now?
Which challenges other than temporarily elevated prices would you identify, Senator?
I'm asking you, what grade would you give the economy?
I think we have the makings of one of the strongest economies in history. We've had 2.6% growth. And core inflation had dropped. Food inflation since President Trump began, as much as you all they want to disagree,
I got it.
Is 2.5%.
So you agree with the president? You would give the economy a plus.
I think we have all
from where you sit.
I think we have all the makings for a very strong economy. I think that we have temporary elevated prices that will come back down.
Observe the way Treasury Secretary Bessent addressed that inquiry. Rather than providing a straightforward grade for our economy, he relied on claiming temporarily inflated prices. As the leader in charge of our national borrowing and fiscal ledger, labeling these expenses fleeting delivers a very distinct signal to households juggling costly groceries, gas, and rent. Before proceeding to the upcoming phase of this confrontation, press the like button and share your thoughts below. Is the economy actually approaching unprecedented power? Or are hardworking households currently being cast aside? Senator Warnock refuses to let this matter go. Pay close attention as he steers this proceeding from everyday household costs directly toward the $31 trillion national debt.
I got it. So you're telling Americans it's not so bad. Americans give the Trump economy a failing grade. You and I can disagree, but this is not about us. They give the economy a failing grade because they can't afford anything. Folks back at home at Georgia, whom I represent, are struggling, let me finish, to just make their lives work. And they know President Trump's Iran war and the tariff taxes are only making things worse. Talk to farmers in Georgia, they'll tell you that. But I'm not so sure folks fully grasp the long-term crisis that's also brewing for our children and our grandchildren. Wars do not pay for themselves. And this year, under the Trump administration's economic policies, the $31 trillion national debt exceeded GDP for basically the first time since World War II. Think about that. Now, to be fair, debt did exceed GDP during the COVID-19 pandemic, but that was only briefly, as GDP crashed as a result of a once-in-a-century pandemic. The big ugly bill alone will add nearly $5 trillion to the national debt, something that I do care about. And I think it matters. I think it's interesting that Republicans talk about it when Democrats are in charge. But I haven't heard much discussion about the national debt lately. According to our nonpartisan scorekeepers in the Congressional Budget Office, it will add $5 trillion to national debt. Do you still think that driving deeper into debt to extend billionaire tax cuts were a good investment?
Sir, that 90% of the filers who availed themselves on President Trump's signature policies make below $100,000. And if you want to know who is responsible for the American people, you all torched them during the Biden administration. I'm not sure if you were part of that. But we had 21.5%.
Look, Joe Biden has been out of office 2 years, and the fact that you all keep talking about it tells you everything. Sir, I'm asking you a basic question. Do you think that going into debt to extend billionaire tax cuts was a good investment? Yes or no?
I disagree with the categorization of billionaire tax cuts when, in fact, most of the tax cuts went to working Americans.
Observe exactly what Bessent just executed. When questioned point blank whether expanding the national debt served as a sound investment, he refused to say yes. Rather, he contested the term billionaire tax cuts to avoid defending the actual policy. The Congressional Budget Office estimated that this legislation added roughly $5 trillion to the debt. Bessent never protested that $5 trillion amount. He merely debated who profits. Yet that leaves a crucial question. If everyday households gain the most from tax cuts, why is the national debt footing the entire bill? As these fiscal figures climb, the argument over who genuinely gains stays intensely fought. Senator Warnock refuses to stand down. Witness the outcome when he leverages the Yale Budget Lab to press Bent regarding the escalating costs of new trade tariffs.
Senator, you are quoting the Congressional Budget Office, which,
according to the Yale Budget Office, the Yale Budget Lab,
the Yale Budget Lab is a bunch of Biden hacks.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, you should talk to the people in Georgia. They will tell you, sir, that whatever tax relief you think you gave them was more than taken up by these tariffs. According to the Yale Budget Lab, the administration's tariffs cost families 3 times as much as they got back in tax cuts. But I don't have to talk to folks at Yale. I talked to the folks in Georgia. How about the Iran war, which is costing tens of billions of dollars and counting? You previously said we have plenty of money for the war. Wars increase the national debt. Is that spending still a good idea, sir? Yes or no?
Sir, do you think it's a good idea to spend so that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon?
Sir, I'm not, sir, do you think it's a good, so you do think it's a good idea?
I think
the Iran war makes...
Upon being confronted with the Yale Budget Lab conclusion that trade duties might cost households triple what they receive in tax cuts, Secretary Bessent gave a quick agreement without offering any different figures. The Yale Budget Lab at Yale University serves as an objective, nonpartisan analytical hub that examines the actual effects of tax and trade regulations on everyday household finances. When their research indicates that households forfeit $3 to tariffs for each dollar saved through tax cuts, that is a solid figure linked directly to actual grocery totals, real gas prices, and real housing costs. Bessent reacted not by challenging the arithmetic, but by dismissing the researchers as partisan operatives before going completely silent as the statistic held firm. That quietness speaks volumes. This interaction underscored a stark clash between official policy justifications and unbiased financial forecasts. Now, Warnock pivots to the financial toll of the Iran confrontation, whereas Bent redirects the spotlight away from government expenditures and toward national defense imperatives. Observe how this back and forth unfolds as Warnock keeps demanding clear explanations regarding the federal budget.
I think just as many people historically, when President Obama was in office, said that Iran may not have a nuclear weapon.
President Obama left office in 2016, sir.
I know, but I'm saying there are many people on this committee who said Iran should never have a nuclear weapon at any cost.
I agree with that. They should not have a nuclear weapon, and they're closer thanks to this administration's policies.
Absolutely
and
not,
the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And you should tell the people in Georgia that this war is a good idea. I think they'll just...
Senator Warnock posed a straightforward inquiry regarding the billions expended on this clash, and Secretary Bessent replied by discussing initiatives from almost 10 years past, Yet, shifting the focus in Washington cannot alter the actual situation on the water. The Strait of Hormuz stays shut, and that lone channel manages approximately 20% of the global petroleum supply each and every day. Whenever that passage becomes obstructed or blocked, energy sectors experience the impact within mere hours. Fuel costs in Georgia, in Ohio, in Arizona, and in all states where everyday citizens pump their gas react almost instantly. This is no theoretical concept. This serves as a tangible bottleneck for the worldwide market. And Warnock recently informed a Senate panel formally that it remains blockaded. Bessent outright rejected claims that Iran was advancing toward a nuclear device. Yet he failed to mention the Strait, where global maritime records verify continuous transit interruptions since the hostilities intensified. Industry experts and maritime firms have diverted vessels past the Cape of Good Hope, instead of risking navigation across the Gulf area, an alternate route that tacks about 14 days onto a trip and drastically inflates the price of each barrel reaching the marketplace. Such freight expenses bleed straight into residential heating oil, commercial trucking diesel, aircraft fuel, and wider manufacturing power. These expenditures steadily seep into retail price tags throughout the entire economy. That illustrates the wider financial hurdle Warnock was presenting to the Treasury Secretary, instead of examining every directive in a vacuum. The overarching dilemma encompasses the combined effect of continuous defense expenditures, commercial duties, and enduring federal obligations, creating a revenue framework that, based on the Congressional Budget Office assessment, tacks almost $5 trillion onto a public deficit that currently outpaces the total commercial production of our nation. These elements combined do not constitute a fleeting hassle. They represent a fundamental realignment regarding who shoulders the burden of running this republic and who escapes it. Consider what Bessent was genuinely justifying inside that chamber. He was protecting the notion that citizens fare better today than they did beneath the prior leadership. He referenced a 2.6% economic expansion and highlighted a decline in baseline inflation to roughly 2.5%. Those statistics are factual. Expanding by 2.6% is certainly notable, and reducing baseline inflation from its highest point is truly meaningful. Yet, here is exactly what those figures fail to reflect. Authentic income expansion, which gauges if your salary genuinely purchases more goods than before, remain negative or stagnant for massive segments of the labor force throughout this time frame. Whenever the expense of groceries, shelter, coverage, and power climbs faster than salary hikes, top-level GDP metrics fail to mirror the true buying capacity of everyday households. Our nation is manufacturing more goods, yet the individuals driving that production are not necessarily retaining more of their earnings. Warnock articulated precisely this argument when he stated, "Americans are giving the economy a failing grade." He was not merely offering an opinion. Shopper sentiment polls have continually demonstrated poor public trust in the financial system, even throughout stretches of statistical expansion. The disconnect between authorized financial statistics and how average folks endure their monetary realities represents one of the signature political conflicts of this generation, and that exact disconnect rested firmly at the heart of this confrontation. Bessent's impulse during this inquiry involved protecting his tenure by referencing metrics, while Warnock's reflex involved personalizing the toll by referencing citizens. Both perspectives embody the core friction between high-level financial metrics and the daily expenses endured by blue-collar households. Broad fiscal indicators reveal the general trajectory of the marketplace, but domestic ledgers dictate whether residents are genuinely staying afloat. This dialogue highlights a foundational split in Washington between justifying broad statistical data and tackling living expenses at the household level. This proceeding prompts a wider inquiry for our nation. Does modern leveraging forge enduring financial resilience, or does it merely delay difficult budgetary choices? The United States has managed massive liabilities previously. During the Second World War, obligations surpassed GDP by a wider gap than they do currently, and our republic emerged from that era possessing a fiercer economy than when it entered, meaning deficit alone is not inherently disastrous, yet the circumstances hold immense weight. Combat borrowing during the 1940s served to construct armed forces capabilities, manufacturing output, and ultimately post-conflict public works that fueled generations of commercial prosperity. The inquiry worth posing today is if the modern blend of revenue reductions, defense allocations, and foreign trade taxes embodies that identical type of asset building, or if it simply steals from tomorrow to fund today, without forging any lasting foundation. Warnock brought this up explicitly when he questioned if plunging further into the red to prolong tax breaks constituted a wise venture. Bessent declined to provide a straightforward yes or no. That very denial serves as an answer on its own. During intense congressional panels, the manner in which leaders tackle harsh monetary forecasts directly molds civilian faith in governmental strategy. Whenever national commanders depend upon semantic arguments instead of confronting the forecasted shortfall, it abandons crucial inquiries entirely unresolved for the populace. That remains the true source of friction within this meeting. Beyond merely the statistics and the political posturing, it centers on the dilemma of whether the individuals tasked with steering our national treasury stand ready to accept responsibility for the decisions they execute. Warnock demanded that responsibility multiple times, and in remarkably clear terms. He requested a clear letter grade, he demanded a binary answer regarding the deficit, and he inquired bluntly regarding the Iranian conflict. Not one of those inquiries garnered a direct response, and by the conclusion of this dialogue, the Strait of Hormuz remained blocked. The national shortfall continued swelling, and the citizens of Georgia kept shelling out more cash for pantry staples than they did 24 months prior. This narrative is far from finished. Ranging from the blockades within the Strait of Hormuz to a federal deficit eclipsing our entire gross domestic product, this congressional debate laid bare the profound rift concerning America's monetary trajectory. Do authorized expansion metrics paint the complete picture, or will ordinary taxpayers confront an increasingly crushing load down the road? Share your perspective with us down in the comments section. Should you appreciate relentless, unbiased reporting on Capitol Hill maneuvers, make sure to subscribe to the Politics Report. We appreciate you watching this broadcast.